Best of Australia. So what's all that about? So I often get asked about our top show cars in Australia compared to what I've seen in the US. And I recently did a video from SEMA on some of the top cars from that event. And it made me think about maybe I should put together a video of some of the cars that have been in the top running in all different categories, not only full show in Australia. And in doing so, I've managed to try and keep that down to 60 cars. And that was a challenge in itself because there's so many good cars. There's like the one you're looking at the moment is current new unveil from Summernats, and it was in the top 10. And you can see with what you're looking at there, unbelievable HT Monaro with a big block Noonan, lots of billet, 1471 blower, and you'll see in a minute the wheels on the back, a size that you don't get to hear too often, so 24 by 13 inch wheels. And I mean, it just goes to show how far our show cars have come. But I'm going to show you a lot of other cars as well, some really nice restored cars, some cars that you would see in Street Elite, and also some of the really nice stuff that might be in the street classes, say at MotorX. So hang in there, it's going to be an hour, but I can assure you we've got some really interesting cars and some exciting cars to look at. And I'm just doing it on my own, and I'll try and give you as much as I can about each car. There's a massive amount of fabrication on this one. And like I said, it was in the top 10 and won quite a lot of other awards. I don't have the list of awards with me, and I don't plan on trying to tell you what every car won and when, unless it was a major winner or somewhere that I recall. But many years and many hours to produce a vehicle of that standard. And right next door to it, you can see the other one in the background there. This beautiful XW, so Frank Zammit, XW Ute. And this car won top judged at Summernats, and I can assure you there wouldn't have been much between it and the Monaro we just looked at. Both come out of similar stable in the sense that Proflow did a lot of the fabrication on the cars, on both cars, and the attention to detail on both of these is incredible. You can see the amount of work in that engine bay. There's not too much of the original car left, and inside and out, door gaps that almost disappear. And then on the trim, incredible amount of fabrication and the trim work to go with it when it comes into focus. So it's always difficult to try and be innovative, and a lot of these bigger shows, there's points for innovation, and that makes a difference to the way the car judges. So you might sort of wonder, how does something like this beat the Monaro? I can assure you it'll be a very fine line and only a couple of points, and the judges need to make those decisions. Quite a lot of body modifications on this one, and the paint dead flat, and I mean a lot of paint all over that car. Everything hand cut, hand polished. So that's running a twin turboed small block, and the wheels on the back of that one are the 22B12s. And it's running an independent front end. Obviously why it's been modified in that engine bay to get those sides nice and flat. And fully fabricated dash, console. Now you go from those cars and then you go to something like this. So this is Ron Barclay's new build, and he's been at this for about 10 years, and I've spoken to Ron many times over those years, showing me photos of things he's doing, the amount of work that he put into things like cross members, all those inner guards and all. It all looks stock, but it's a long way from it. And this particular car won top paint at MotorX, and it was in elite class there, but not in superstars because it hadn't qualified. And you can see the detail there, those stripes coming around the back of the bonnet. And just the way everything's, the fit and finish on the car, incredible amount of fine tuning and detail to make the car what it is. The difficulty Ron has is for that car to compete in the outright judging for modified vehicles is he doesn't carry enough points from engineering and innovation, for instance, to make it competitive at the very top end. It'll do well in some of the classes, bodywork, paintwork, but the same in trim. It's a magnificent job, and the finish that we're looking at there now is incredible. But once again, you lose out because of the quantity of work done on some of the other cars that have got a major amount of modification. So it's always difficult to build a car like this, but if you talk to Ron, this is the car he wants, and it's an incredible build. And the problem he has, it's almost too good, well, it is too good to go in the restored class. So that's Ronnie's. Moving on to Michelle White's Blown HZ. This was unveiled, I think, 2 years ago. It's done quite a lot of shows now. And this was taken at the Hot Rod Show in Sydney. And what we have is a 355 Holden V8 with a 671 supercharger on it. When I first seen this car, I made the comment it looked like a piece of Swarovski crystal. And I've spoken to Michelle a couple of times, and she loved that comment because being a girl's car, and she openly admits that with her 671 number plate, that was her aim, to build something that would have that same feel of a piece of crystal. And I think they've achieved that with the paint colour and the amount of effort put into it. Now this car I've seen a couple of times, and I don't have a lot of info on it. I did a lot of research to put this program together, and I couldn't find too much on this, and unfortunately when I've filmed it I haven't done enough on the signs to know whose it is, so my apologies to whoever owns it. But I put it in because I see this as like a street elite. In my mind, a little bit old school. It's got, you know, the billet wheels and the trim styling and all is probably 15 years old in the styling, but it's all about what the owner likes and what they want to build. And I put it in because I just think it's a really nice car. TRIGGA. So another ProFlow engine, and I would think a fair bit of work done at ProFlow. So this is Tim McDonald. It's making 1,000 horsepower, and it's a Dart based Windsor, and it's running a turbo 400 auto behind it. And it's interesting that a car like this that did a few of the major shows, it was actually at the Summernats as an entrant this year, but not in the hall and not in the judging, but parked up under a tree. I seen a photo of it just parked up. They were there having a good time, and I guess that's what our sport's all about. But it's presented extremely well here, and I like things like that where they just add little bits and pieces that personalise the vehicle, and the choice of colour, the blown engine, the big wheels, and then that traditional trim as well. So that was Superstars, and I would think that would have been 2023. Now this is one of those polarising type vehicles. So this was this is Livi's 1978 Porsche 911, and as you can tell I'm reading that, and it was the grand champion from Summernats 35. But I seen this car, I think when I filmed this the first time at Motorex as an unveil, and I loved it from day one. I mean it's a classic build that just, I don't know, I just like the feel of it. It's not overdone, nothing's hidden, you know, all of the fuel lines, you can see the fuel lines, you can see all the components, and there's not a lot of bling in the fact that they haven't chromed things, polished the stainless. A lot of it's satin, and it just has that nice look and feel about it. And the tartan on the inside, there's a couple of companies in California that do that style of trim, and obviously it runs with that, and it's designed to go and to stop, and it obviously proved that by winning Grand Champion by doing very well on the driving events as well as the judging. And I really like the stand on this one as well. There's a lot of billet aluminium work there. So classic car. Now another XW. So there's quite a lot of XWs and XYs. And this particular one, if I read my notes here, is Jamie Galea's Mad XW. It's got a 600 horsepower 393 Clevo in it. And once again, this is a car that I filmed quite a few times at various shows around Australia. And I've put it in because it just has that, it sits right, it's shiny, it's got nice colour, finished off super well. And I could imagine closing that bonnet and being able to drive it. Now we jump to something totally different now. So Cam Waters, one of our Ford supercar drivers, wanted to build himself a Falcon coupe, hardtop, depending on where you come from. And this Pro Touring inspired vehicle's been built by Rides By Kam, and there's been a few other people involved in that with building of engines and things. So the engine in it is based on a Dart Windsor, and it's running the Ford Performance Racing Tickford Supercar manifold, and then it's been modified to be able to work and run in the car. But there's quite a lot of innovative parts in this car from a supercar. So a lot of the wiring, the switching in the dash, which we'll probably see in a minute, is very unique to what I see as street machine builds. And there's a lot of things in this car that you wouldn't normally see in one of our traditional builds. A lot of changes there. You can see the flush mounted glass. I squared a lot of the lines off on this car. So flush mounted glass on the front. And if my memory serves me correctly, it's sitting on airbags. So all those switches and all that's all supercar technology. So this car, they put a video up on the Supercar website and it did hundreds of thousands of views. Very popular build, super popular driver. And when I've spoken to him and his dad, the plan is to use it, but I think it's going to be just babied a little bit for a while before he gets it out on the street too much. There's a lot of time and a lot of money invested in a car like this. Now, Barra of the world, they say. So Hamish Davidson's 76 Jag XJ-C. So this car sort of took a lot of people's attention when it was unveiled. So this comes out of Exclusive Customs, and I think the trim by memories was a Brent Parker trim. And for me to look at a car like this, there's so many things to look at. The bodywork, the way the trim moulds into the car and works. It still looks like a Jag, but it's obviously had a lot of functionality changes to run with the new driveline. And being a Barra, of course, and it's running a ZF 6-speed auto as well. So a very drivable car, and I would think something, if you've closed all the doors up, and the two doors and the boot and the bonnet, it would just look like any other Jag sitting in the street. Now, GT Falcons. So I think it's nearly 2 years ago now I went to the GT Nationals at Bathurst, and I'll be heading down to Shepparton for this year's Nationals. And there was some cars that were in the pit area, like this particular Phase 2, where they're displayed at the very, very top end. And I thought the display in itself on this was cool, that all of the parts they've used on the new old stock parts they've used on the car, they had all the empty boxes on the stand. And the quality of the restorations on some of these cars is amazing, and I've put a couple in to the show because I think it's very indicative of where our sport hobby is, and just how much attention with a car like this to make sure it's all correct, it's all the right parts, everything's in the right place, it's got the right overspray. And there was some incredible examples there shown. Now there was 450 GTs there, and some of those were unrestored. So I mean, there's bits and pieces for everybody, but this was one of the ones that I picked that I thought I'd put into the show, because if this car was sitting at a show in America, people would be just blown away with the quality when it would be being compared to Mustangs and Galaxies and that type of thing over in the US. I dare say it's difficult for these guys not to make them too good, because in a lot of cases, you know, people probably think these cars are better than they ever were from the factory, but they just spend so much time putting them back as they were. It's incredible. Now here's one I've put in. It's what I would see as a traditional street machine, so a V8 conversion on a HR. Nice colour. It's got all of the Prem chrome work and badges and trim and all the stuff on it that just makes it right. But the paint quality and the finish, you know, we talk about it all the time, the fit and finish. Just an absolutely beautiful car, and a bit of a standout to me. Reminds me of my younger days. Probably the sort of thing that you would see in the 70s, maybe the 80s. Now, who doesn't love a Willys? Now, I struggled to find too much information on this. I filmed it up at the Hot Rod Show at Sydney at Rose Hill, and just a stunning vehicle. The paintwork and the graphics, the flames, obviously left-hand drive by the look of that, I hadn't noticed that. And all the billet add-ons, great use of colour. Righto, so back to something I know a little bit more about. So this one's obviously in Superstars. So this is Brenton Dalwood, and he's 35 Ford Coupe. And these guys, I'm sure, are out of South Australia. And this was our Grand Master from 2022. So only a couple of years ago. And he picked up 5 gold and 2 silvers. And when I looked at this car, I just went, my God. You know, so many people must have spent so many hours finishing all of those. Like, look at the door jambs, all the underside, the amount of effort in that trim, and then getting everything to fit like it does is just blows me away, just unbelievable. And then add to that, you've got all the polishing and the chrome and the undercarriage, and it just didn't stop. I mean, everywhere you looked, there was something else to find. The way the exhaust was done, just incredible. So I mean, you stick that on a stand at any show in America and it's going to hold its own. Now another local car, so I say local as in an Aussie, 2-door Falcon. The interesting part about it, so this is Paul Tinning's XP. It won the 2022 Laurie Starling Engineering Excellence Award, and the reason for that is the things we're looking at in the engine bay. It's a V10 twin turbo, but it also has, you know, it's been tubbed. Look at the size of that trans tunnel to get that motor and gearbox in there. And quite innovative with the way the boot and the bonnet's been done, so it doesn't actually come down into the back, and it also doesn't roll over into the bonnet. The bonnet doesn't roll over into the grille. And I often say on, you know, when we're doing videos of what we're building, the problem with one change leads to about 5. So you think, I'll weld that boot opening up and then I'll make my own and I'll change this and change that, and next thing you know, you've lost a month. That back bumper's all moulded into the body. And I did see when I was doing a bit of my research, I took it up to Rocky Nats and did the events up there. So it's a goer as well. Now we jump back to the 50s. So Mike Davidson's 54 Chevrolet Bel Air Sports Coupe, and it's super nice. I love the blue. The whole combination just suits Mike and his character, and I got to talk to him about some of the mods on it. There's quite a lot of body mods that you may or may not see on it, but it's got quite a lot of things. It's got caddy headlight buckets, and it's got a different grille, 11 tooth grille compared to standard, and there's a lot of things on this car that unless you were talking to Mike you wouldn't know. And it's running a 406 small block Chevy with a 671 and of course those Webers, and the car now runs a full Kugel independent rear end as well. So he made comment at the Summernats this year that he's pretty much done with the show thing now. They just want to get some cruising done. So it was top 10 at the Summernats this year, and I believe very close. It didn't quite get in the Super 6, but I would think it was probably 7 or 8. Now I'll put this one in because I filmed this at Showcars Melbourne. So Showcars Melbourne's coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and they put on a really good show there, and this car had been sort of tucked away for a while, so most people would know that this is Mario Colito's build from way back, and unfortunately Mario passed back in 2018 and the family decided to sell the vehicle, and the guy that's bought it now has been able to present it at a few shows, which it's good to see it back out because it's a very innovative car. And in 2011, so what, 13, 14 years ago, this car took out the King of Customs at one of the big shows in the US. So I thought it was a good opportunity to put that in because it's just a stunning car, something made in Australia that went to the US and did really well. Righto, so how about a Commodore? So Race VN Group A. So it's running a 6 litre 871, all controlled with a Haltech Elite 2500. And Chubby Lowe had a lot to do with the build on this, and I'm not about to profess to know too much about it except for the fact that the car has the right look. It sort of feels right when you look at it, everything's balanced. And the presentation, and you know, we talk about all the time, the detail in this car is outstanding. The trim, so many modifications and changes to the original, and then everything covered in leather. So once again, this is up at the Hot Rod Show. So if you're Sydney based, out at Rose Hill in May normally, I think it's later in May this year. It's a 2-day event, and they have a lot of cars from all around the country on display in a really good venue up at the racecourse there. Now this is one of my favourites, and when I was looking through all of the videos we had, I've filmed this about 4 times, and every time I seem to have done a long version on it. And I just think it's such a beautiful looking car and a classic car. And what is it, a 58 Corvette? But what you can't see very easily is the fact that it's running all late model suspension as well as the brakes, and then a 535 horsepower Gen 5 V8. So incredible car. And I love it, and I love the use of the black and the red. Rolling on into Dan Morton's XY, known as Forged. And this car was the 2023 Grandmaster, and you'll see the trophies there on the stand. So this car had been put together over 10 years in a couple of different shops, but initially Adam Labrise had a big involvement, and then it was put away for some time, and then it came back out and went up to Pat's Pro Restos up in Brisbane. and then they spent quite a few years finessing and changing some of the things that was done previously, and then adding what we see today in a fully modified car. And when it was released, a lot of people talked about the fact that, you know, it won also 7 gold. And I mean, that had been done before, and it was done with tailspin back in 2017 or 2018. And in a lot of cases, even things like X-Boss, the 2-door that went to the US and made the Grade 8, when it won Grandmaster, it had 4 gold. So this was unique in the sense that it had all 7, and it'll probably be a while before we see another one, but it takes a long build and a lot of major modifications that are done well to achieve that many points. So much fabrication and paint and panel work. You know, they created their own mufflers, they made their own steering wheels, they just did so many things, flush mounted glass, removed drip gutters, welded the guards and the cover there for where the wipers go, all made into one piece. So from one Grandmaster to another, so this is the 2024 Grandmaster, and this particular car, Craig McKenzie bought the HR Ute, and it's a fairly legendary HR Ute, show Ute, and it was unveiled back at Summernats 20 by Ditch Jones, and Craig's added his own flair and works in the paint industry and has put a lot of time into finessing the body and all of those door openings. It's what I class as an old school show car, where it's got no door rubbers, it's got no windows, side glass. So it's not what you call a functional vehicle, but it was probably never built for that. It's a show car. And he did very well this year, and I think by memory it was about 4 gold. Yep, I made a note of that, 4 gold medals. You can see the levitating seats there. So that car was auctioned not long after and moved on to a new owner. And from what I understand, Craig's now has a lot of the parts from the old blowback Ute, which had the 2 engines, the blown engine in the back and the standard engine in the front of a Holden Ute. And my understanding is in the process of bringing that all back together. Now, back up at the hot rod show. So Champagne Lady, and I'm going to read this because it's I pulled this off one of the sites. So it's built up at Andy's Restorations in Sydney, and it's a concept car and modern art deco rendition of a 41 Willys coupe, a 39 Bugatti Type 57C and a 39 Lincoln Zephyr. So I'll leave you just to absorb all of that, because it's an incredible build and really has a shape of its own and would fit in with those big custom events over in the US. Now, I'm deliberately jumping around here a bit because I didn't want people to feel that it was all one thing or another, but this car I've seen a couple of times and I really like it. And the reason I like it, it's a Falcon 500 GS and it's a 6-cylinder 2V manual. So the fact that someone's found this car and chosen to keep it as it was, I think is really cool. And it was a really well done restoration, and it just goes to show you don't have to have a GT, you don't have to have a V8. You can have a really nice car as it was from the factory and be able to present that at something like the Hot Rod Show, or they have a section now at the GT Nationals as well. So the 252V had that bolt-on manifold, and a lot of those engines ended up in speedway cars, so they're a little bit hard to find the parts for, but beautiful build. And so's this one. So this particular car is a replica, and it's been built by Kim Bissett down at Bissett Bodyworks in Devonport, Tasmania. And I've done a couple of interviews with Kim, and we sort of swapped photos and stuff online and through SNS, and he's in the process of doing like an XE at the moment for himself. So this is his own car. It was built over 8 years, and it was done outside of working hours because he has a panel shop. It was all done at night and on weekends, and a huge amount of love for what he does to be able to produce this, to work all day in a panel shop and then do this sort of work at night. I really have admiration for people that can do that, because over the years when I worked all nights and weekends, I didn't do it during the day as well, and I just find it so hard. There he is there. So Surfer Orange. So many parts to get right to build a car of this level. Now another one of my favourites, and of course it's a Ford being one of my favourites, but this one's Steve Aldrich. So Steve runs deluxe hot rods just out of Melbourne, and this is his own ute that I believe started off to be the shop ute, but I think he's got a bit carried away. So Steve's a second generation hot rod builder and has built a lot of top end cars for people, and this is his own, and it's another guy that obviously works all day and then works all night on cars, and obviously loves what he does because his work and his presentation's incredible. You'll see the bonnet there, so it's a bit of a takeoff of, he made that out of steel, but it's a takeoff from the Thunderbolt Fairlanes and the lightweight Galaxies of the 60s in the US. And the motor you're looking at is a 347 Windsor that's making around 500. And he did have that at the Summernats and ran it through the driving events also. Yeah, a cool car, nice guys, and a great team down there at that hot rod shop, Deluxe, that's what I was looking for. Now the boys at Lovells. So without Lovells, we're unable to do what we do. It's, their help and their sponsorship helps me to move around the country and film all the things we do and put that on film and let Louise do the edit and all to be able to bring it to you. And I thank them very much for their support. So if you like getting your car dirty like that, or you just tow on something, a boat or a car trailer, talk to Lovells about their upgrades, increase your gross vehicle mass ability, and also your ability to get out there off-road and enjoy what you do. Now, John Cavassini's 34 Coupe. There's a bit of a backstory this one. Apparently it went to Johnny Z's hot rod and custom shop to get something sorted out with the steering column, and it didn't leave for quite some time and ended up doing a major build on it. Stunning vehicle. I always have a bit of a laugh to myself about the power to weight on these vehicles. Looks like a big block, blown big block in a car that probably weighs a bit over 1,000 kilo. Must be an absolute dream to drive. Got a bit of technology with the big screen and all. They'll be able to run the Apple CarPlay so you can use your phone and all those sorts of things. Now, I put this in, it's a favourite of mine, but I put it in for two reasons. One is that I do love the look and I like custom cars, but the paint on this car, whoa, it disappeared on me. So the paint on that car won paint at Summernats against Boss XC that we built, and incredible paint work, and that flame car ended up going over to Japan for the Moon Eyes event in Japan, so well done to those guys. Now, the High Boy. So this is Andrew Atkins' 32 Ford. So it was at That's at the Hot Rod Show, but I first seen it at MotorX in Superstars, and it was one of the very late qualifiers, and they were still sort of messing about with parts and stuff on it in the hall when they were doing it. Stunning car. Go and have a look at a couple of my videos and I'll talk more about it there, but beautiful car. Now, Bernie's XR. So once again, there's a few Fords in here because Howard's a bit of a Ford man, but this one I like because it's got the Gurney Eagle in it. And I think it just goes to show it's a magnificent car everywhere else as well, but having that Gurney Eagle in really gives it something special. And for those that don't know, Dan Gurney developed those, the heads and the intake on those way back in the 60s, late 60s, and they were on the GT40 that won Le Mans in 68, 69. So that one in that car is making 570, it's 7.5 grand. And I do know he gets it out and drives it because I was at the Father's Day show in Melbourne and he drove into the event and parked it up and then drove it home. So you can have a nice car like that and still use it. Now the Evil LJ. So it's sort of come to fame a bit at the moment. It's actually a past Summernats top 10 car, but it was built for a TV show and it was built in just 4 months. And what's happened now is it's actually one of the latest models produced by Oz Wheels, and they had the debut of those models at Summernats this year. So I filmed this up at the Hot Rod Show, and it's that blue really pops. I mean, when it's in the sun, it's incredible. I'm not necessarily a massive fan of an all black engine, but I think that works with the colour. It's got so much blue going on as well. So what I'd class as an event car. Now, Chris Murphy's XW Ute. Everything seems to have horsepower nowadays, so a 427 small block with making 607, and the body and paint's done by Resurrection Paint and Panel. An unveil car at this year's the 2024 Summernats 37. Utes seem to become fairly popular of late. Now this Walkinshaw, now I've seen this a couple of times, mainly at Melbourne shows. They really were a classic with the amount of bolt-on fiberglass and stuff that were on them, but this car just sits right. It's got the bigger wheels, massive wheels on the back, all that detail in the engine bay. Incredible brake system on it as well. And it's just really well presented inside out and underneath. Now, Delete Stripe GT. So John Walsh's 1970 XW GT, and I pinched that off his signboard because I did manage to get that into the shot. And once again, it's just a really nice clean car. And then this is that next level up. So this is another one out of Pat's Pros Restos from up in Brisbane, and it's full restoration. And it's a Tropic Gold, the colour on that one. And it looks like it was pretty well optioned, that car, from the factory with the factory wheels. It's quite unusual to have a shop like Pat's where they do full restos like this, but at the same time they're also doing fully modified cars like Forged, and also the 54 of Mike Davidson's Chevy as well. So they've obviously got a good crew there that can handle all the different areas. So that was an unveil last year, I believe. My memory serves me. Yeah, last year at, oh no, Motor X just gone. So 2024 Motor X. Now another neat little Tirana. So this is Rob DeCiccio from South Australia. And I follow some people on Facebook that's Southern Classic and Customs out of South Australia that do some awesome work. And they teamed up with some others, and you're going to laugh at some of the names sometimes. Fat Guts Racing did quite a lot of fabrication on the vehicle, and it's running the Dart LXX 6-bolt LS3 heads, twin Garrett turbos, making a lazy 1250 horsepower. So I'm sure that'd be a handful. But the detail, fit and finish is amazing, and this was at Summernats where I videoed this, but it was also in Superstars at Motor X. Now, a car a lot of people would know, Phil Roletter's Pro Street Holden, another South Australian build out of Rotor Customs in South Australia, and this car has been around for over 20 years, and this is like a restoration of that original car some 23 years after it was campaigned in pro street drag racing and street use and all sorts of stuff. And I don't profess to know all of the backstory, but I know one thing, it's got a lot of chrome. Now another car that's got the old backstory behind it again. This vehicle was owned by David Zammit's dad. It's a 1978 HZ Caprice, and he tracked it down and found it, and then spent 5 years rebuilding it and obviously making a few mods at the same time. And it's beautifully presented. Incredible amount of changes and detail. You can see all the billet fittings, all the fabricated door trims and stuff. So super nice car. Once again up at Rose Hill. Now Adrian, so Adrian Haynes, this is a LS3 powered 6-speed manual LX Tirana hatch, and I've filmed this numerous times, and once again the detail, and it comes through the owner's efforts, but also Jason and Glenn Coburn up at Exclusive Customs did the body and paint on the vehicle, and then Adrian's done a lot of work himself as well on the underside. And it's built like a Pro Tourer, and at this point he hasn't had the chance to get it out and use it much yet, but I'm sure that'll be on the cards. Now, Ashley Bell's XA Fairmont, so a factory colour wild plum, and you'll see by the plate here it's XA Hernt, and her partner is Michael. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. So Michael's from Hoon Customs, and he has XB Hoon. And this is the partner's car, so this is the chick version, and she loves it. They've gone with the tartan, and I love the way they present it on the tartan. This was filmed here at Unanderra, and then they detailed it all back up, because they do drive a lot. They drove it down to this show, so you know, hour or so drive down from Sydney. And then they cleaned it all up for Summernats and drove it to Summernats, and then got talked into going in the judging, and the car ended up back in the top 60 again this year at Summernats. So really good to see, nice build. It goes, it drives, and it picks up a bit of tin wear along the way as well. So nice build. So Ian Wood's Holden panel van. So aren't the vans making a comeback at the moment? So more and more I see all the time, and I must admit I'm on a few pages on Facebook for panel vans because I'm doing one myself, but seems to be more and more of them about. And this particular one is built out west by Stripback Customs in Dubbo, and Brad Pizzi and his team put this together for the owner. It's very bright when it's on the stand. When you're standing next to it, the thing just, you almost need your sunglasses on. And it's interesting to note that when I was doing my homework to be able to do this, if you go onto the Street Machine magazine website and use their search tool on there and put in the name, either the rego number or the particular car, they all of their old stories come up, and it enables you to have a decent look at some still shots and also find out a bit more about the driveline and what's going on with the cars. So I reckon about the 60 cars here, 45 or 50 of them are all in Street Machine magazine over the last couple of years. Now this is someone thinking outside the box. So Lincoln Stevens, he's got a V8 swapped elite level BMW E30 running a Getrag 5-speed manual. And I was really taken back with this car. I filmed it a couple of times trying to capture it properly, because I think it's just good to see someone build something like this that nobody else is doing and then finish it to this level, and I believe a lot of it was done at home. And it was debuted up at Rocky Nats probably 18 months ago. But I love the build, love the car, love the colour, and it all fits right, it just looks right. Now this little rocket ship here was unveiled at Summernats 36, and I filmed it. There wasn't a lot of signage, if I remember correctly. Maybe the TV wasn't running, but man, it was low, it was small, and it was finished really, really well. So I thought I'd put it in because there's a lot of Rotor followers, including one that works for me, Steve, calls himself the Rotor Man, and just a cool little car. Just as much work as the big ones to do, and done extremely well. Now, Mad 67 Mustang. It's another ProFlow engine, and I don't have a lot of specs on this one, unfortunately, but it's I've made the comment a few times before. It's without that thing through the bonnet, it would be a cool looking thing on the street. With the thing out through the bonnet, it's even cooler on the street, except you might not last as long without getting the attention of the gendarme, I guess. But beautiful build, beautiful car, and we're seeing more and more of these event style vehicles being built. Now, a traditional hot rod. I've got nothing on this except the fact the number plate says Lakester, and I like the build, I like the colour, I like the wheels. You talk about bigs and littles, look at the variation in the size of that front to back wheel. If you like your traditional hot rods, I think that's one for you. Now, while we're on hot rods, I think I've got a couple to show you here. So this one's lost me notes at the moment. This is Brian's 34 Chevy sedan, and built at Deluxe Rod Shop, and it's running an LS2 with a T56 gearbox. Incredible presentation, and I mean, this vehicle was built around the COVID time, and when we sort of didn't have shows for a year, it was probably the potential stand-up winner for Grandmaster, and we didn't have one. And then the following year, you would have just seen in the background, they put Forged into Superstars on a wild card, and that probably took it away from this particular car. But I mean, it's incredible build, incredible amount of time, the amount of effort put into that stand, because part of the judging at Superstars includes the stand, and this car's won many, many awards, and it's an absolute beautiful build, and a credit to all those people involved in it. Now, like I said, another hot rod. So Lance Brown's 34 Ford 3-window coupe. I stood back and looked at this car numerous times, and I spoke at length to the guy. One of the young guys there on the left was one of the painters that worked in the shop that built this car, and they pushed it to get it to this event. And the deal was the owner was going to drive it home from the event. And once he's seen it presented on the stand, because he hadn't seen it finished, he went, you better trailer it home because I'm not going to drive that yet. It's just too good. Very, very well finished car. Very difficult to film the colour. It's such a deep burgundy that when you get some light on it, I'd imagine it would be absolutely spectacular out in the sun. But so many talented tradespeople in Australia that build all these cars. I find a lot of these hot rods aren't overbuilt. They don't have massive, brakes. They have brakes that'll make it work. They're not a very heavy car, so they don't need a lot of brakes to be effective. And I mean, closed up, that thing would be absolutely sensational. Righto, moving along to another Monaro, so a HK GTS, and you can see in the engine bay there a bit of late model stuff going on. So this one's Bruno's, and it's LS powered as we can tell, but it's a 6.2 litre crate motor making 580 horsepower, backed up by a power glide with a Ford 9-inch in it. So just a really nice classic build that I thought fits with the sort of theme I had going for this video, is to have a whole lot of different things. Now, Rob's Candy Apple Red XW GT replica. Now, I know the purists would pick it, but this car as a replica is incredibly done. You can tell on the paint there it's a little bit too well done, but I've seen it a few times. This was up at the Hot Rod Show. I've seen it at Noonan at the Paul Beck Show, the Killer Rides. And at the Killer Rides, it had just been detailed by one of the top end detailers in Wollongong, and it just looked absolutely stunning. It's got a little 434 Dart Windsor in it, making 670 horsepower. It's got a C10 Pro Trans behind it, and obviously the 9-inch. It's superbly finished. I often say it's harder to do a boot like that than it is to box it out and trim it up and do the show car street look than it is to do that. And I'm going to stay with that theme because this is a car that was actually debuted at MotorX, was unveiled there. It's from Grand Tourer in Melbourne, and it's the real deal. It's a GT, and Chris that owns the car went to Grand Tourer in Campbellfield to have it built as a full-blown resto at the very top level, and you can see it presented there at the GT Nationals. And if you go and look at that video of the Nationals, I actually interviewed Chris at that event and spoke to him about the process and dealing with chasing parts and all for Grand Tourer to enable them to actually achieve that level of result. It really is a team effort by everybody, the owner, the builders, the painter. Now, don't get excited about cars too much anymore. I've seen that many, and as you can tell just from this one little video, that's just 60 of the hundreds and hundreds of cars I've seen. This red XE 351 ESP, and it's a manual, which is a bit unusual, very much took my eye because this was my era, that these were new when I was sort of buying new cars, and the way this car is presented is absolutely outstanding, and everything in its place and every part looks new, and I don't even profess to understand how they managed to do that, but it was beautifully presented. And I got a feeling I spoke to him on Facebook or something, and it was a one owner and it was complete, but they had to basically restore the whole car to get it to look like that. It wasn't like it was just found like that, it was restored. Now, keep going. I think we're about 30 cars in now. So Tim's HK GTS running a 6.2 litre LS3 871, and it's got the old Blow Joe low profile hat on it. It's a cool looking thing, red and black. I've seen it numerous times in different lights and it always looks good. I was getting a bit worried I'd put too many Fords into my collection, but I'm sort of holding my own now. I've got a few more Monaros as well. So this was filmed at Motor X in Superstars, and this particular pavilion that these cars are in, the carpet, it's air conditioned, the lighting and all really does do wonders to make these cars look their best, there's no doubt about that. So Matt McIntosh's twin turbo small block powered HQ Statesman. So this was the top judged car at Summernats 2 years ago, and there's a lot of novel items on this car. The engine bay is very, what I class as Americanised. It's got all that sort of shape and all to it. There's been a few in Australia, but it's what a lot of the big builders in the US does. But it's also got one-piece mouldings around the front windscreen, for instance, that they've manufactured. And I mean, that use of matte paints and coatings and gloss, and it's just, it works absolutely amazing. And then it's got chassis connectors that are all made out of tube and tubular front end. Incredible amount of work. If you sat that on a turbo manufacturer's standard SEMA, that would be an absolute blowout. There'd be people absolutely flocked around it. Everywhere you look, there's something modified, something made, something adapted. Incredible build. Now, a little Mazda 1300 wide body sedan, and I only know that because I had to ask Steve, but I said to him, mate, what do you know this car? And he knew of it, but he didn't know exactly where it come from or whatever, but I just thought it was cool. I think the use of the colour they've used, it's got obviously the big Garrett turbo hanging off it, got the cage, got the race seats. Nicely detailed. It sort of all fits in its place and looks right, and if you like that sort of car, I'm sure you'll like that one. Righto, so we're on to a HG Monaro now. So 565 Brodex big block Chevy making 735 horsepower, running through a turbo 400 9-inch. And Willwood brakes, so I managed to read all that off the sign, which was pretty cool. And it's run an independent front end and a single leaf rear. So I dare say that's designed to hook up at the track. So you can see around this car, all the other cars, there's an amazing amount of high end cars built every year in this country, and you go to something like this show and I just see the red 55 I think on the right there is an older one, but so many good cars, and every year there's more to see. And of course this car had a remake, so Jason Mansueto's to Annihilate XW, very well known car now at Grand Champion at Summernats a couple of years back, but since then he's gone on to run it at the track as well. It's run a 7, and it ran the 7 because it makes 1269 horsepower out of a 652 big block, running through a power glide, and obviously the 9-inch with a leaf spring rear that's been modified and all moved inboards and sway bars and stuff. So built to go hard, and also present extremely well. And I mean, another one of those cars, if you close it up and it's just sitting there, it doesn't look too much different than a stocker. But if you go and read some of the articles on that car, it's had a massive amount of suspension changes, front and rear, and a lot of work done to make the engine look factory, even though it's got massive carbies and nitrous and all sorts of stuff hidden under the air cleaner. So if you go and have a look at some of those stories, the one in Street Machine's pretty cool. Go on their website and check it out. So another new car, an unveil from this year's Summernats 37, and this is Rick Absalom's 1948 Chevy pickup. So it's running a small block Chevy with a 671 blower on it, and what we read on the sign on this one was that all the assembly and the detail and the polishing is all done at home, which is cool to see and to hear. And it's also running a Jag independent front and rear suspension, so a bit of an old hot rodders trick there to take the front end out of the Jag and also the rear. And it had a really cool stand that we talked about on the video, and then the timber work in the back. I mean, all of these cars have just got so much detail everywhere on the car, it's phenomenal. Now, Dean Rickard, 69 HT Monaro from Down Under Customs. I interviewed, we did a few shows called Inside Scoop, and I interviewed Dean about his car and why he built it and all those sorts of things, so you can go and check that out if you're interested. But Downtown do their own design for their front and rear suspensions, and they can do that for different cars, including this one. And they always seem to sit right, look right, the wheel combination's the right size, they're not too big, not too small. And in this particular case, it's running an LS3 and T56 Magnum, and the trim in that one was done by Brent Parker. Now this one, so this is Rob's LSA powered 1949 Chevy 3100 pickup. And I seen this, the first time I seen this, I reckon, was at the Hot Rod Show. And I was really taken back by the depth of the paint and what we're looking at now, the trim in this. And I wasn't aware then that I am now that it's actually a Mercedes A-Class is a lot of the dash components and the door trim components and stuff. And it's all been moulded in there to look really, really correct. It just looks right. And then they pulled some of that trim into the rear area as well. And it's running on airbag suspension, and like I said, it's LSA powered. And I like some of the things like the lights there and the way the bumpers fit and the finish in all those areas that we're looking at there now. And you go down into there, that could have been quite easily just painted or coated, but they've trimmed it and it's a standout. So a couple of brothers now, Noonan and Eddie with their XE Fairmont gear. So it's a Barra turbo, it's making a little 1300 horsepower through a glide and then into a 9-inch. And the boys assure me that this will run at the track. They have put another set of wheels on it already, I believe, to be able to run at the track. I dare say a set of B-locks with that much power. And I just think there's some nice novel things on this car. The way they've done the Fairmont gear striping and all, they've done that in gold leaf, very much the style of the lowrider type feel. And then the same with the trim, they've brought the trim into the boot, and that's that classic ESP trim. And the colours on this car, by memory when I spoke to them, that this was the factory colours. So something a little bit different, a little bit novel, and it'll be interesting to see how they go at the track with that one. Righto, another pickup. So Adam Bickenstaff. It's a 1956 F100. It's running a 5 litre Coyote with a Whipple supercharger, backed up with a 10-speed auto, and then a 9-inch. Runs a Mustang front end. And this work's all been done up at Viking, or down at Viking Hot Rods in Bomaderry. It's just down from us, about an hour's drive down from Wollongong. I seen the chassis of this car at the Hot Rod show the year before, and I was blown away by just looking at the detail in the chassis and the driveline, and then they brought it back finished like this. And I think it's some of the best use of colour and satin finishes as a combination that is really like a designer's dream. It just, I don't know, sits right, feels right, looks right, and presents incredibly well. Now, I must be nearly at the end because I held this one back till last. So this is the last build that I did in Astill design, and probably be the last one I'll ever do at this level. So this is Peter Lewis's XC 4-door sedan. We had it here for about 3.5 years. It had been in another shop prior to us that we utilised some of that, but changed some of it. Had some very subtle body modifications done. It's running an 18 front and a 20-inch rear, 20x12 rear. It's got a Kugel rear end, and that big engine we started with is a Boss 9. It's a 429, making about 700 horsepower through a ZF, 6-speed auto, and then things like the bumpers and all are chopped and moved. And that's a colour that was mixed by John Aristis up at PPG. And then midway through the build, Peter asked about potentially putting the FG interior in it, and that just snowballed into a bit of a monster, but we managed to get that done with Simon at Elite Trim. So it's running all of the dash, all the computer controls for the FG, and we then followed that through and ran all of the brake system, the ABS and all that sort of stuff. So like I say, that'll probably be my last one. It's 17 Elite builds that I've done either for myself or customers over 45 years. And I've just got my panel van to finish now. So I'm going to round that out. If you've managed to stay through for the hour, thanks for joining us. And I'm just looking at this one to show that Australia produces some amazing cars, and of all different types and styles and levels. And if you get the opportunity, get out to some of the indoor shows in your capital or wherever you are, and enjoy what we all love to do in the show car world. So thanks for joining us. Thanks to Lovels for supporting what we do. And as I always say, bye for now, and we'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget, subscribe, click on the like button, ask a question. If I can, I'll answer it, and we'll get back to you. So thanks again.